Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode here at Lavender Lush Cleaning. I'm super excited because today we have a really cool guest. Her name is Olivia Benson and she's from Mix and Mesh. She's an expert in interior design and she helps clients with finish selections during home builds and remodels. So she's really passionate about creating spaces that aren't just beautiful, but they actually really work for your mental health. So we're going to talk about the connection between design. We're going to talk about cleanliness and organization and how your environment can either support or sabotage your peace of mind. So whether you're designing from scratch or just trying to make your space feel a little more livable, this episode is going to be a gem because you just really want to get to know Olivia. And I'm really curious, Olivia, about your entire business, everything that you do. And yeah, if we want to start, tell us what Mix and Mesh is, and please explain, what do you mean by finish selections? Because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, of course. So essentially, my company Mix and Mesh, our mission is really to empower homeowners when it comes to remodels and interiors, and new builds, really. So the thought process is I found over the years with a lot of clients, when it comes to finish selections, I know you mentioned that as a question. Essentially, it's all the selections you have to make when you are going through a remodel or new build. So things like plumbing, your tile, your appliances, like all the things, the decisions that have to be made beyond just design, that a lot of people get hung up on,
Right.
whether it's color, undertones, like understanding the material itself and how one material might be better for them than another. I really help clients kind of go along the path and better understand what works best for them, not only from a style standpoint, what they gravitate towards, but also what really makes a good design that they can enjoy for years to come.
Cool. And on your website, which is such a cute website, I love it so much. I love the colors. And the first thing I was drawn to actually was that it said you're a finish palette expert. Is that the same thing
Mm-hmm.
that we're talking about, or are you talking about colors at all? Because I'm a big color person.
I mean, it's all encompassing, really. We talk a lot about color when it comes to making finished selections. I kind of coined the term as a finished palette expert after doing many what I call palettes over the years. And that's really your assortment of all of those finishes that you would find in a home. And so that's just a term that I coined to help better people kind of to understand what I do, because sometimes in the world of interior design, people think more of decoration, which
Right.
I do happen to help with from time to time. But my focus is really more on the construction design side, especially when it comes to those hard to make decisions and selections.
Okay. That helps to clear it up a little bit and get a better picture of what you do. But yeah, I'm a very visual person too, and I think when you are designing a home or building a home, we don't think about all those things and how it kind of affects us. And I can totally see what you're saying because I would be the homeowner getting hung up on all of those different selections. And it's a pretty permanent decision also. You can change things, but it's going to be very expensive. And so I think the investment in finding an expert to help you make the perfect choices is totally valuable. And so I love that you're here today. And I wanted to kind of dive in first with talking about designing a space. How much do you think that design actually affects like our daily habits when it comes to like having a space where you can easily clean and organize things? How does some of that design come into play?
I mean, really, it's one of the first things I consider when I'm working with clients. Way before we talk about things like style, what they gravitate towards on Pinterest, one of the first discussions I have is to kind of figure out how they use their home.
Right.
Not only from like a lifestyle standpoint, but especially when it comes to cleaning. Because I do find a lot of times people, when it comes to interior design, they get really excited because they see images on Pinterest and they think, wow, like look at this beautiful kitchen. I love the marble countertop. And then once I start to dive deeper with my clients, it becomes painfully obvious that that material might not work best for them, and that it's not gonna look good even 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, like my process always at the very beginning, I sit down with the client and I said, hey, tell me about the members of your family. Do you have dogs, cats? How many kids do you have? Are they older? Are they younger? Like there's just so many factors in terms of what kind of people are living in the home, and then kind of a step after that of how they go about cleaning their home. Are they the kind of person that cleans up spills instantly, or will it sit for a while? Because that will kind of lead the discussion and try to better understand what materials work best for them.
Right. That makes so much sense. I mean, anybody watching this right now, I mean, I'm sitting in my house thinking, yeah, I wish somebody would have told me, well, I mean, I didn't build this house, but if I did, someone would have needed to tell me that if you're in Utah, you know about these cabinets that get built over the islands that open up backwards that you can't even get into without kind of climbing on top of the counter. There are these weird desk spaces in the kitchens that I think they were made to do homework or something. And there's a hole there for cords to go through. So I'm assuming it's where electronics would go, but there's nowhere for it to go out to a plug. There's all these weird design things that I don't think people fully think through. And like what you're saying, you want a space to be functional. I love the idea of thinking about it from an organization and a cleaning standpoint, because you're 100% right. Like if I spill something on the counter, I will clean it pretty fast. But if my dog spills something over here out of his water bowl, or the kids' playroom, is it going to be cleaned up immediately, or is there a possibility that it might sit for a couple days because it's in a spot I don't frequently look that closely? We don't think about little things like that, and they're so important because you do end up with damage. I mean, my cleaners go in and we clean these areas and we find the damaged areas because they're so easily overlooked, or they have the type of materials you're talking about, the finishes that aren't suitable for that kind of mess. And so I love approaching design that way. And I've never really fully thought about it that way before. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up. And that kind of leads into the next question, which we're already kind of talking about, which is, what are some common design mistakes that you've seen that weren't intentional, but, you know, they just make the whole space harder to keep clean and tidy and organized?
Mm-hmm. I think you actually touched on it a little bit earlier, but one big mistake that I see is kind of designing without storage in mind. Like, so for your house right now, the person who designed the house probably had an ideal client in mind. But when you're coming into it, you're thinking, oh, maybe I don't need a homework station. And if I do, where's my plug? So really kind of taking it a step further and understanding the task that is happening in each space and kind of breaking it down by room. And one thing that I see very often when it comes to common design mistakes, especially from a tidying standpoint, is, you know, we've all heard that drop zones are good, you know, trying to find areas where you can consolidate and bring everything together. But I do find that a lot of the times, because people are moving in, very rarely are people building their own homes. Like, it's a dream. We'd all love to do it. But like, let's face the fact, usually the first couple homes you have, you're getting something that's been already built. And so really where remodel comes in, or even thinking big, if you're doing a new build and kind of thinking how you want your house to work for you, you have to kind of think about the task at hand for each room and how you go about doing that task. There are so many there's so many studies out there when it comes to how we navigate our spaces. And time again, what we see very often is that if you have a designated task at hand, so let's say a laundry room, not only do you want storage solutions that make that task easier, because let's face it, no one wants to do chores, but the closer proximity it is to you, the more likely you are to follow through and it or doing it quicker. So some simple things, like as an example from a design standpoint, when I'm trying to design laundry rooms, I always try and get a sink and faucet in there in case you need to kind of deep soak any stains. Something even as simple as having a countertop above your washer and dryer if you have a front load, so that you can easily pull out your items and just fold right there. Just kind of making the day-to-day habits as consolidated as possible so that you're more likely to actually do it. And
Right.
also keep things tidy.
That's a great example because my laundry room is probably the bane of my existence. It's in the basement.
Most people.
I already hate doing laundry. So yeah, so when I have to do laundry, it's 10 times as bad. It sits in a pile for, to be honest, till I run out of clothes. And then I just wash another load.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have the space that I want in there because if I had a table, which I would love, I could fold things there because I don't like my things to get wrinkled either. If I could relocate it, I would, but I don't think that that's something I can do. But if it was even if it was just a prettier space, I've also recognized if the space is just more visually enjoyable visibly, like it looks pretty, the aesthetic is there, I'm more likely to be more productive in there too. And my
You
laundry
feel
room
good
doesn't.
being in that space.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some of our clients with unfinished basements or more of a crawl space and laundry down there, and that would be very hard for me to be really productive in. Or maybe I would move faster because I want to get out of there.
Get out of there.
But there is a big my procrastination would kick in, and I would try to do it as least like as little as possible. Um, so yeah, I know when you enjoy a space and you feel good moving through it, you're more likely to do things in there and be productive for sure.
And one other
Yeah.
thing I did want to touch on, really, when it comes to like kind of um, hiding things, when it comes to tidying, like kind of messes, I think there's a lot of people don't realize the power of patterns when it comes to making finish selections. So a lot of times what I'll see in rooms like laundry rooms where they don't usually get tidied as much, they kind of become kind of the back crawl space,
Right.
is that we'll use very loud patterns on the floor and it kind of disguises any dirt or anything you might find. So you can kind of trick the eye to think that something is cleaner than it actually is, but only if you understand how to use it to your advantage. Like sometimes I had one client recently who she was an avid baker. She always had bread out on her counter in her island. And she was showing me these beautiful Pinterest images of this soapstone countertop. And I was like, one thing, soapstone, it's so easy to damage. It's like soft, it's so brittle. So I managed to talk her out of it. But one of my talking points to her and through that was like, look, I'm sure you're baking all the time. You will see every single little crumb that ever existed on your counter. So maybe let's choose something that's in the lighter range or maybe even kind of in that red color range so that all those little messes that you won't clean up immediately but still need to get to aren't as obvious to you.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point too about social media and how we view things. I had posted something a little while ago that our homes aren't just because your home doesn't look Instagram worthy or Pinterest worthy, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with your house. Like houses are meant to be lived in. And I'm coming from a cleaning standpoint. People think they can't take a picture because their house looks lived in. There's dirt, there's clothes, and then they want this other reality of what they see online when they're not always thinking about functionality and if that's something they can actually live with. So I think you bring up a really good point. And then, this kind of leads into our other topic as well. But as far as like, specifically in your experience, how does the design of these spaces really affect a person's mental or emotional state? Have you dealt with that a lot when it comes to your clients?
Yeah, I would say it's something that a lot of people don't really consider because it tends to be silent. We don't consciously recognize when we walk into a space, but there's a reason why when we go to like parade of homes or model homes where we walk in and we feel like, wow, this feels put together. And I'm sure like having it clean is a standpoint. Of course, it's good to have it well organized. But there is a lot to say when it comes to psychology in terms of having big windows and large volumes. Like and I could talk about it for hours. But really kind of in a condensed version, it really comes down to playing with volume. We feel lighter and airier when we're in a room with taller ceilings, which is why we tend to do that in conversational areas and living rooms. Where in spaces where we're having more intimate activities, where we're trying to rest, we tend to kind of close the window and keep things a bit more intimate, if you will, in terms of the sensations that we're feeling. And that also plays into color psychology. Like I'm sure you've heard when it comes to, your happy, your peppy colors. We're thinking your warm colors, your pinks, your
Right.
oranges or yellows. They're great. And it's a very good color palette to go off of when you're trying to feel energized. You need kind of a little bit of a dopamine hit.
Uh-huh.
But that's not necessarily color you want to use in a bedroom where you're trying to wind down.
Right. Right.
And so it's just a lot of things to consider when it comes to really, again, kind of going back to how are you using each space and how to play with either dimension or color, or in this instance, like finishes and materials to really facilitate whatever action or behavior you want to get out of that space.
Yeah. And it sounds like you brought up remodeling, which I
Mhm.
kind of wanted to touch on because we did say, to be honest, a lot of us don't have the opportunity to just build our dream homes, especially in the very beginning. We usually tend to move through a couple homes, and you kind of learn through that process, what works, what you want in your next home, or what you want in your dream home that you do build. So a lot of people do have to do some remodeling to get the spaces that they really love and they really feel good in. And when it comes to redesigning and remodeling, for someone who might be watching this and feeling really overwhelmed with any clutter, what are some things that they should consider, or where should they start looking? Like, walk us through that process or through the customer or client's mindset.
Yeah. So really, I mean, like you said, when you're in a home where you can't really like change walls and ceilings or whatever, you're working with the box that you're given. One tip that I always give my clients is really that there is something to say that if you want to feel lighter, use lighter colors. If you have a room that's very dark and small and you don't want it to feel that way, then you kind of have to use your color psychology in there and lighten it up, be it through the walls or the countertops. So this is just some like quick options, especially with paint. It's so easy to
Yeah.
kind of infuse an emotion with paint, even if it's just to make everything white, you know. So that's one way to do it. But really, when I start designing a space, and we're talking about how we're actually using it, I like to step back and kind of, when it comes to designing, kind of observe what the friction points are in their existing space. And a lot of times it does come down to organization, especially in our kitchens and bathrooms. It's kind of one of those things where you'll approach a vanity and you're like, wow, it's 8 feet long, it's so big. And then you feel like you can't fit anything in it because maybe the drawers aren't deep enough for what you need, or you don't have that outlet that would be so useful if you were trying to do your hair that day. And so really it's kind of talking through your habits of what you do and planning around that and with it so that you can make your home work for you. And if we're talking about beyond remodel, just, okay, how do I work with my current state? Because maybe I don't have the budget for it right now. That corralling mentality, how can we get everything that we need in one spot and organized in a way that's also out of sight, out of mind? And I'm sure you've had this with clients. If sometimes we want things front and center because it reminds us that we need to do that task,
Right.
right? It's kind of like having like your keys out, like, oh, my keys are always here. I can get to it. It's predictable in its location.
Mm-hmm.
Down. But the same can be said on the opposite end. If I have 30 lipsticks that I need, that I have to have at all times, I'm not going to need it day in, a day out. I need to find a way that I can organize it almost in a hierarchy where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what do I need day to day that should be out?
Right.
What do I need maybe a few times a week that should be accessible but hidden? And then you kind of starting to go into your deep storage where you're thinking, okay, maybe I'll open it like once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I still need to know where it is at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So really kind of employing either labeling or just a hierarchy, if you will, so that you can find what you need when you need it and not be digging through things that you won't open until like 3 years from now.
Right. It's an amazing thing too about using an expert like yourself and the service that you offer is I'm thinking of like, if I was in a good spot to build a home or buy a home or remodel and I was not experienced in owning homes already, I wouldn't even know what I don't know. And I feel like someone like you would already know these things and give suggestions like, this is great. However, have you ever considered that maybe you might need a space like this? Like, you're asking the questions that people don't ask themselves. We see things very surface level. Well, not everybody. Some people are really good. My husband is one of those people that would analyze the layout of a space and where he would put things. I'm just very surface level. This is really pretty. I like the way the countertops look and the cabinets. I wouldn't even think that this cabinet opens up backwards and isn't functional. And so it's great to have somebody to actually ask those questions, because you might be a young family and having children, like your whole life changes. Now you need different types of services, different types of storage solutions, even different functions for different rooms. And my kids are older now, and so I don't have babies, but I do have 2 dogs. And the way we live in our home now is completely different than we did before we had kids and then after we had little ones. Our whole lives have just evolved. And so your needs evolve. And so it's really great to have an expert to hold your hand. Otherwise, you're making costly mistakes that a lot of people will watch this and say, I know exactly what I hate in my house. I wish we didn't do that.
And it's nice to have that kind of outside in aspect. Because like you said, a lot of people they're more concerned and excited about how the end result is going to look like. They're not thinking about it today. And so that's kind of where a designer like myself would come in and say, okay, how do you use this space? How do you intend on doing it? And what can we do to kind of solve some of those issues so that your house can work more for you instead of you kind of having that friction and working against it all the time?
Yeah. And it's funny too that we're talking about this, because I'm specifically recalling some of our clients that we've helped over the last 3 years where we've gone into clean and the space is very awkward and unusual. And you can tell from a space if it's not being utilized in I want to say almost like a happy way. You can tell there's some kind of tension there because this doesn't work. Sometimes clients will just say like, I need this clean. This doesn't work. I hate how this is. And you got to like reach underneath to get it cleaned. And I can't reach down there. Or some of our elderly patients too, where they can't reach certain things. And the design just wasn't kept in mind for people who would need a little assistance in those areas. And so, do you have any recommendations that you can think of off the top of your head within a home? I don't know if there's maybe things that people could do in the moment right now, because you do a lot of remodeling and helping with the design of like construction, but do you see anything you could give tips for anybody watching that they could do right now to help improve the flow of their spaces? Anything like that you can think of? And if not, it's okay.
Too. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because that really kind of goes more into like the organization standpoint, right? And so at the end of the day, I feel like if you're thinking, okay, I feel empowered by this talk, let's figure out what we can do now, because maybe I don't have the budget for down the line. Aside from, of course, planning down the line and almost keeping a list of what you do or don't like about your house, so that when you're ready for that remodel, you know what to ask for.
I have this list. It's on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone has a list, whether it's on their phone or on their countertop. Like they're just like ready to be like, oh, wouldn't this be great if I had this problem solved? But really, in terms of like doing something that's actionable right now, I feel like when kitchens tend to be the biggest culprit. And I love that you mentioned that like some clients, they get so frustrated with their spaces, they don't clean with them. We kind of see the same issue when it comes to design, that people tend to put more value and money into the spaces that they use day in, day out, because they know they're going to be there and they want it to be good for that. And so when I think of a kitchen in terms of making things easier for you, something that I see time and time again, especially when I start working with clients in the organization standpoint of their drawers, is making sure that the task that you have is in close proximity to the utilities that you're using. A lot of times I'll go through clients' houses when I'm doing kitchen consultations, and we'll go through and I'll open their cabinets and I'm like, your range or you cook your items are 6 feet away. Why are your pots all the way over here? Why are you trekking all that heavy stuff when you can easily put it in the cabinet that's adjacent? And these are just things that most people don't think of. And so like even when it comes to your dining room, typically your dining room is adjacent via a room or an area. And it's always good to have those serving items. Your cup, plate, silverware, it should be on the edge of your kitchen so that you can get to it quickly and not have to kind of run into everything else. And again, that kind of goes back to your hierarchy. And trying to do really good design at the end of the day is trying to use the space that you have and say, okay, how can I make my life easier? And that really does start with organization.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you so much for coming on this episode. I'm really excited. If people see this and they want to learn more about Mix and Mesh, how can they find you?
Yeah, really, I'm across all social media platforms. So you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. I post videos daily. And I also recently started doing essentially open office hours at coffee shops. So if you happen to be in Utah Valley and you want to come say hi to me, I post my hours and you can literally ask me any question during those. Just pop in, grab a latte, and come chat with me, and we can discuss some of your burning design questions.
Well, that's awesome. And then as far you mentioned, did you say Utah Valley? What service area are you kind of working in?
I mean, I've worked with clients all over. I would say, of course, with the office hours, I tend to be in like Utah Valley, Salt Lake.
Okay.
But really, I mean, I have a client right now that I'm working with in Florida. So I'm not really location bound at the end of the day. A lot of my services, I either go to you or we can just continue them virtually.
Awesome. Well, Olivia, thank you so much for sharing everything, all of your wisdom, everything about Mix and Mesh. I love that we both care about creating homes that feel really good to live in and not just look good in photos. So if you're watching this and you're feeling inspired to refresh your space, make sure you reach out to myself, reach out to Olivia, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this content and you found it useful, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so that you can get notifications whenever we release new videos.